Well, the discussion of street closures, my issue with it was that the first initial thought was that it was going to be only for this year. Came up because of COVID and not as a way to possibly grow our city in terms of walkability in the summer. The parking situation downtown can be bad during events, but for most of the city and most of the summer, it's not too terrible. So I'm surprised this is only going to be a temporary thing right now and still working on the rest of it. As to the items on the agenda, what happened to the negotiations that the city wouldn't have to pay once bridges are sold? We sold them under the pretense that UVP would be picking up all obligation, and we still have it on the budget. On my reading and research of point 17 in the packet, it seems it was put in more of a way that for a company that has issues, even though we're told that the wrongdoing parts of the old UVP aren't in Bay City, and that indemnity clause seems kind of written as in we're expecting something to possibly happen, instead of we're just waiting to make sure nothing happens. We went to the other part of that. We are now adding another 30 days to the transfer time, and I'm not sure why, unless the commission is not ready to stand up and get the agreement done. Also, with the transition period being added, why are we adding it if we're signing the official agreement for the last part of the whole agreement that was signed back in December? It seems like another complication that didn't really need to be done, unless there's something that's not in the packet that I can't see. I'm glad we're finally getting a playground at Vets Park after the long wait and battle between is it going to be Vets Park or the Middle Grounds, and now we're back at Vets. I would have liked to see the blueprints that were given for the other ideas or the other companies, because we always saw in the packet was the costs, and the costs were the same because of the scope of the project. But I would have liked to see what all the companies came up with so we could just look at that. I don't know if that's actually allowed to be done because it's state budget laws, but or bidding laws. But I wanted to make sure that if we could see it, that'd just be nice to see. And for the construction of Winona Park, still don't know if those are the restrooms in the new pavilion that need to be redone already, or if there's a cost for the updating the bathrooms by the band shell. If they're renovating the pavilion that's only 2 years old, what happened, and why are we on the hook for that? This project was supposed to be revenue neutral for the city. The city was not supposed to be able to not have to put any money into it, and we'd have to be putting money into it. It was also said that the income coming in from the new pavilion and the items from it would allow the city to not have to pay for other improvements in the park. And now we're paying for improvements in the park. The bathrooms and the band shell should have been done first with the money that was available, and it could have been. And now we're looking at paying for a remodel that is possibly just a quick fix, depending if it's the band shell bathrooms. So that is all I have today, so I'll mute and shut myself up. Alright, so we just finished the City Commission meeting for 6-1. A lot of things were asked, the questions were actually done. If you notice from my public input portion, they did answer a question about which bathrooms are being fixed in Winona Park, and they are fixing the old ones that are part of the old band shell, brickwork, and the old storage area. They are not fixing ones in the pavilion. That could have been fixed with one sentence in the packet, instead of having to be asked twice over 2 weeks to get it done. As for other items on the agenda, they have agreed finally the operations and maintenance agreement with UVP, but nobody answered any questions about why we're still paying for this next year. In the budget, we're still allocating over about, I can't remember off the top of my head, $500,000 to maintain Liberty Independence Bridge, but Liberty Independence Bridge is supposed to be sold, so why are we still paying for it? It's not listed in that agreement, and it's something that should be noted and fixed by the commission. Because of that vote, and their unanimous approval of it, or any passage of it technically, the extension of the transition period is moot. So now that is signed, the transition is gone, which is helpful because now we know what's going on. But we were not told if that 30-day extension originally will turn into a 30-day extension of the completion of the project, or for when tolls start. So we expect the 90-day transition period, and then we expected tolls by, I think it said June 2022. That means now July 2022, or it's still June 2022, and they have a smaller window to complete the project. That's not listed. We are getting we approved almost $500,000 project to put a new playground in Betts Park. Now, I mentioned this in the public input session, but the Betts Park playground, the old imagination station, was toxic. It was leaking toxic substances, and a lot of them around the country had to be torn down because of this. Because the wood from the early 90s that they used was not safe. And it was leaching the ground. It's a whole big deal. Now, after about 4 years of them fighting over it, is it going to go back in Betts Park? Is it going to go to Middle Ground because they could get a partial grant from the group that oversees Middle Ground? And now it's going back to Betts Park. Now that we have that, it's going to be $446,940. Quite a bit of money for a play place, but it should be fairly substantial. And that means the one that's on the north side of the bridge, the old plastic and pipe one, that's by the tiny shack pavilion, will likely get removed in the next few years after this, or at least renovated, because that's old and that was not meant to be a long-term option when they put that one up. You know, it's about the same age as the imagination. It was not meant to be a long-term item. The property is on Marquette Avenue, 2421 and 2435, owned by Assets Catalyst LLC. Sunshine to Asset Catalyst is a marijuana grow facility. It's in an industrial area. The map zoning does work for that. It's out of the way from pretty much everything. It's not an industrial area back there because it's on Marquette to the east of Truman Parkway, way back there. It's almost to Wilder again, and Wilder, cuts off Patterson. It's a whole big thing at that corner. So it's a ways back there. There's no specifics on what exactly they'll be doing inside of it, except that it's a grow facility, but I doubt it will be actually a retail location. Now we're on to the bathrooms at Winona Park. As I noted in the public speaking area, the bathrooms in Winona Park project was not listed whether it was for renovating the 2-year-old bathrooms in the pavilion, or if it was for fixing the old ones that have been closed for the last year and a half. Well, we finally got an answer. 2 weeks since I asked last time, so 2 weeks, 2 meetings, however you want to phrase that. They're finally going to fix those ones. Now, back when they mentioned the whole pavilion park renovation, the money, $1 million grant from one of the big endowment foundations in the area, was to go toward improvements into Winona Park. And that was an original agreement to the State Theaters group who runs most of Winona Park to take care of that. And they turned it into $1 million toward that pavilion. Well, now they're finally fixing the fan shell up. And the pavilion has had a lot of warranty work on it because the floor didn't work right, and it had issues with the way it was set up the first time, and they're finally fixing those, but in 2 years and it's still not quite 100%, nor has the promise of year-long ability for skating been fulfilled in any respect. And when it is open, the flocks of people expected to go downtown to do that have been almost non-existent. So there's a lot of broken promises there. And if the city was going to be on the hook for improvements to those bathrooms, that's just another ding in the fact that they weren't fiscally responsible in choosing that. So if it's for the other ones, it makes more sense. But the fact that we were told back at the Doubletree Hotel in 2016, 2017 now, it's been a while, what's going to happen? The city was supposed to be off the hook for all improvements in the park. This is going to pay for itself. We're going to have tons of money into the park. We can fix everything up and cover the cost and have a maintenance endowment set up for the park, fixing stuff in the future so that it lasts forever, or 60 plus years. And that's not going to happen now because the city's paying for this, and they had a year where there's no events, so they don't have any money coming from that, and skating revenue's been non-existent, so there's no money from that. So who's benefiting from that? And the answer is not the taxpayer of Bay City, and that's the problem. So they are going to open the bathrooms back up eventually after a $150,000 remodel of both rooms. So it's not going to be a major remodel, it's going to be essentially a fix, but it should be taken care of now. Other things in the agenda, the school district's liaison officers, so the police officers in the school, so at Handy and at Central, because those are in the city limits. They didn't have to work after March because the schools were closed because of COVID and governor's orders and everything. Well, now the city has gotten into agreement with the school district to reduce the payment for those officers, and which makes sense. The schools are closed, the officers haven't had to work those beats, so it's gone. Good, we saved a little bit of money on that. And then the streets that are closing. We have 2 districts that are going to test this out. Unfortunately, it was only going to be for a summer with COVID, which isn't great. I was hoping this would be a long-term project. The city has the opportunity to be a leader in the area for walkable streets during summer season. Now, you can say, well, there's not enough parking in downtown. Well, you live in Bay City, you know that outside of specific weekends for events downtown, there is usually plenty of parking. And closing these off, for the most part, will not affect the average person visiting downtown Bay City in the summer season. So the streets they're going to close include along Midland Street on both sides of Henry for one block. I believe those could run another block in each direction and close the intersections off, actually, but they're not doing that. And then on the east side along Saginaw, between Center and 5th, and then on Center Saginaw to Washington, and then Adams from Center to 5th, and then 3rd Street between Water and Saginaw. And all those areas they all got into agreement. The blocks, businesses that aren't going to be affected by this, so, any offices, insurance buildings, professional services that don't have food are going to allow these businesses to use their sidewalks and reach out into the street. If businesses have parallel parking, they can use 4 feet into the road. If they have angled parking, they can use 10 feet into the road. And in the center will just be a walking lane. And the city's ordering bollards, so the big vehicle stopping, so that if people don't pay attention, those people will stop and people won't be hurt, are on order, so they can do this. They're expected to start next week, which would be the 7th at this point, unless something changes. So we'll see what happens there. But this is a move that is in the right direction, but currently narrow-minded thought. The city can do this for most of the year on a few areas. We have the parking, we have the ability. It's just a matter of business owners and DDA and DMV to think outside the box to be able to do this properly. Not really any other notes in the meeting, which is a good thing. The last Zoom meeting for City Commission is expected to be the one on June 15th. So 2 weeks from now, will be the last Zoom-only meeting. We'll see if they continue it as a sidebar for City Commission meeting for back at City Hall in July. Just in time to see the past budget already. They are expecting to do applicants for the 3rd ward. The interviews for them on the 29th. They said they have 3 or 4 right now, so we'll see who they are, what they are looking at, and hopefully the commission makes a decision not based off of politics and off of actual people. And we'll go off of that. So thanks everybody, and we'll see you later.